Welcome back to here at Goldberg. Today we have to talk about the touch grass meme. This is apparently a condescending retort that people will hear if they are too closely aligned to internet narratives. They'll be have the finger waved at them. Oh, you need to go outside. Stop being crazy. In the past, they would have said, "You're in TV land. There's that butter melting out of your ears because you're watching a screen too much." And to some degree, I'm sympathetic because, like I talked about with the lower and southern video, how many dudes, especially, but there are a lot of women more towards the left side, but how many people they pledge themselves to these narratives and become hysterical and they orient their whole life around this big moment that's supposedly going to happen, like, oh, this government will come in, or socialism will be achieved, or immigration will be cut off. And it's just like they're not able to think outside of it. They're not even able to live their lives because they're constantly waiting on this moment of decline, or perhaps if you want to see it as ascension. So, yeah, getting outside, talking to people. I know conversations can be difficult because a lot of folks are in their phone, but you'll find the occasional people. And if you travel a little bit more, you'll experience that whether or not it leads to you in terms of the dudes who are frustrated, whether or not it leads to you getting laid, it's going to be a much more interesting and frankly enlivening experience than just, oh, I'm going to go back and comment the same thing I heard for years from this particular community. So I definitely will nudge folks in that direction. At times, I do enjoy making these social experiments because I know that there are certain people you can tell are wrapped up in social media too much. As a recent example, saw this chick wearing the headscarf, not the old one I was talking about, this is new. I don't think she's trad because she has a pretty good STEM job, but she's coming up to me and, somewhat cute, lighter tone Arab chick. She has that expression though where it's sort of the defensive one. She's looking at you like, oh, you don't like me because I'm Muslim. You're probably a Trump supporter. I'm in solidarity with Ian Omar and my sister's a color. And I just waited for her to get close, and then I hit her with a classic Goldberg smile, sans the toothy grin. Not that I've got crooked teeth or anything, but I find that men who smile with their teeth are trying too hard to please, especially women. I actually think it looks disjointed and unhinged. And I said, hey, good morning, how's it going today? And her face melts like a marshmallow, and she starts smiling, totally changing proportions. The last time I saw her the other day, she's all beaming, and her body language like she's trying to get closer to me. So that's probably a chick that absorbs all this crap like TED Talks, what it's like being Muslim in America, and yada yada, and oh, the white men are privileged. Now I have nothing to prove, like, oh, I'm different from the others. I'm just saying, I think it's funny when you're able to pull that off and people assume a bunch of things about you and then it turns out to be false and they probably enjoy your company more than the shills who just repeat crap online. So who knows? I don't know if it's going to lead anywhere, but I'm just pointing that out. Of course, someone's going to comment, yeah, but you wouldn't do that to an Arab cell. Here's the thing, okay? The guys that are from the Middle East or the Indian subcontinent, if you're not like Brahmin, like the people with a typically better genetics, or like the upper class rich Sunnis that married with the Europeans, um, forget about the trad Hindu or trad Muslim family relationship. Because if you marry a woman that's like arranged, you marry a woman that's not that good looking, and your kids end up with the same features, I mean, that's kind of cruel, honestly. Uh, these dudes should just gay max or bust. There's no shame. It'll be good for you, and your kids that you won't have will thank you, honestly. I'm just saying. I mean, sometimes it's better, instead of getting wrapped up in this red pill stuff and wasting a bunch of your life, just face the facts and move on. Because I point to that, there's this library I go to sometimes near my work. There's a lot of middle schoolers and high schoolers, and let me tell you, the incel wave has not hit yet. It's going to be worse because these folks are being brought up with an entitlement mentality that America loves diversity, but they're going to find that they have no SMV, and it's going to make them very angry, also very horny. So you have to understand that. It's another angle we can just bleed into where I don't like this touch grass argument. I brought it up in I think it was the West Elm Caleb video, that tweet where the guy's saying, see, most women would reject, these women that are complaining about Caleb would reject most men, and they're going, oh, stop being hysterical, you're crazy, go and talk to women, be normal, be yourself. That kind of matriarchal condescension where you're some angry child that needs to be calmed down, given apple juice and a cookie. I can't stand that because you get it from all different facets. You get it from a lot of right-wingers, even especially boomers, that they don't understand what's going on. That's why I wrote the book I did, to save lives, to get out ahead of it. Give it 5 or so years, this incel problem is going to be out of control. It's not something that we wish for, but it's going to be a huge issue because no one wants to get serious about what's going on. And even if you believe in like the oofy doofy cope, which I'm going to do a video because I have some recent experience that doesn't quite add up to the conclusions they want to make. But even there, we know that forming relationships, which is what keeps society stable over the long run, because not everyone's just trying to get laid, that has become very difficult compared to past times. And if you still want to be a shill, you can do so, but you're a shill and you're a liar and you're denying information that's directly in front of you. All right? We can now proceed. On a different note, we have to address this whole tendency to romanticize going back to the land. So many folks since the 2008 recession have been appropriating the work of Thoreau and Walden and whatnot, oftentimes without actually directly citing him. But this book, I highly recommend it because it's part biography, but part just an explanation more so of his philosophy about what Thoreau was advocating. Go out and live in the cabin in the woods and just get in contact with nature. It's a good book, the original as well. Walden should definitely check it out. But so Thoreau himself, he came from a pretty well-to-do family that ran, of all things, a pencil factory. And this was a trend in this period of American history where a lot of folks are moving from the agrarian model to more the industrial age. Well, if you were the kids of those who had been successful as a line manager or even a factory owner, you now reach that point where you have most of what you need. And so you're more inclined to turn around and be critical of the lifestyle that you tend to inhabit. We see this as well in Germany at the same time. The romanticization of the peasant, of the farmer. That's the spiritual closeness to God or nature, the depths of spirituality of living in the Black Forest, okay? These are trends and they're very common and they're predictable because when you're a farmer and you have to do a lot of stuff hand to mouth, working sun up to sun down, make enough to feed yourself or enough to sell at the market, you're at the mercy of what? You could have a plague of locusts, which has been documented throughout American history. There was recently one a few years ago, I think, that it was pretty bad. Not just the locusts, but you've got issues like, is the weather on your side? Do you have a good harvest? Do you have animals that intervene? Do you have like a plague that takes out crops or livestock? So these are all aspects you don't have to worry about when you have a relatively stable middle class or upper class lifestyle. But you can look at it like, oh, it's so much better because it's just so pure and genuine and sincere. In fact, wasn't it part of the reason Sri Lanka collapsed is that the government tried to mandate organic farming at some level and the yield just dropped dramatically? Because when you're doing stuff the genuine way, like God intended, there's less guarantees. So, it becomes complicated if you want to feed a bunch of people. So with that being said, you see this, like, especially with the right wing since Biden became president, this obsession with running to the hills, waiting for the end times, homesteading, whatever, which, not saying it's all bad, but there's also the side that you're not considering, the realities of that lifestyle, that you have the luxury of being able to long for it because you've never had to really rely on that as your main source of subsistence. And this brings me to the constant claims that, oh, working with your hands is so much more fulfilling, brah. That's what you got to do. I had a lot of those comments when I did the video on postponing your life, which I was just talking about my own opinion. I didn't try to force it on anyone, but everyone tends to have that assumption. You're addressing me. Oh my God. I want to move where the green simps grow. That kind of approach to life. Well, I've done a lot of manual labor throughout my life, okay? When I was 9 years old, I was made to go work on this farm. And the farmer was this really kind, very gentle, very patient, Gentile guy, wonderful person, okay? For some reason, he married a penny-pinching, stereotypical, nasty, brutish Care Bear chick. And she was mean, especially mean to me because I was younger. I was working there with my brother, and she just did not like me for whatever reason, probably because I tended to speak my mind. But I would be put out in the field to pull thistle plants, which if you've ever done this, fantastic experience. Like, wait, Goldberg, you saying you're like Jesus Goldberg? Yeah, I was a sharecropper when I was like 9 years old. but I'd be pulling out these thistle plants. She wouldn't give you heavy duty gloves. She have these like cotton gloves, so you're getting your hand impaled constantly. There's these big ass brown dirt spiders that are biting you. Oh, it builds character, brah. Yeah. And then we were running the fruit stand, selling stuff, and we were supposed to do it together, but my brother elbowed me out of what was supposed to be my job. So she's like, I'm not going to pay you for doing nothing. So she makes me go and cut this grass, which is like a foot and a half tall, with one of those old self-propelled mowers, which when you're like, I was probably 8 years old, 8, 9, that range, and you're not very heavy, obviously. Those things would drag you around, right? Plus, the mower kept conking out because the grass was so high. So yeah, I've done agricultural stuff. I still do with my garden, but that's not quite at the same scale. And then I graduated from college. I'd done some work with the Park Service, but I was told, listening to Return of Kings, Aaron Clare, yeah, you got to do trades. Trades are great. Trades, it's so fulfilling to work with your hands, brah. So I got a job in as a plant operator, which also had a lot of collateral duties, doing maintenance with equipment, cleaning, painting, all that nonsense. Um, Paid decently well, very good benefits. Never had better benefits than when I was at the plant. Terrible schedule, very stressful, and you're dealing with toxic chemicals all the time. So there's a price to that, right? Uh, People like to blot that out and say, oh, you're just a wuss if you don't want to be around toxic chemicals. Well, okay, who knows? Who knows who's going to win at the end of the day? It's kind of grim when you think about it. But then I got a job as an actual tradesman in a construction environment. I'm not talking about AC working on a controller unit in a building. I'm talking about an actual base construction environment. And yeah, there's some satisfaction when you hook up a light or you weld a piece of equipment into the wall, or you're working against gravity. You have to weld these bolts into the ceiling so you can attach the little cable run platforms, and you have to try to attach the cables that keep falling, zip tie them in. Um, it's certainly an adventure, right? And at the end of the day, which sometimes your days you accomplish nothing because just getting equipment to where you have to work would take forever, or it's not actually functioning, or you have to wait for permits, whatever. At the end of the day, your snot is like solid encrusted black or kind of like sandy brown because you've got paint dust, metal dust, grease everywhere. You're like, well, why don't you just wear your mask? I'm COVID-19. Try wearing a mask in these environments. You will suffocate. That's how bad it is. So, yeah, there's an element of fulfillment, but at the end of the day, it's a job, right? It's going to get monotonous and boring. There's also a lot of clowns you work with. I mean, I had a dude drop a huge industrial cable, very heavy, right? One person can't pick up the thing. It's so long and weighs a great deal. He just dropped it in my face because he was kind of high and he was, just dirk, right? I don't think I got a concussion. Maybe I did. That would explain why I am this way today. Who knows? But I'm trying to point out the fact that it's a job. So if you really love it, it's fine. But the idea that the grass is so much greener because you're working with your hands, I don't necessarily buy that, okay? I've worked in office environments. My current job is slightly blue collar, slightly white collar. It provides me the flexibility to do a lot of my research stuff, so it's a much better position, and it's paid better than being there as a tradesman, working in those environments. If you like the trades, that's fantastic. But I noticed that these guys get very defensive because many of them, it's their whole identity. Like, yeah, human beings, we need myths about ourselves, I suppose, to keep us in line. But they get so defensive. It's like, dude, the smart guys in trades, they do it for a few years and then they go the general contractor route and they manage other people. And they don't even necessarily hire tradespeople. They hire like illegal immigrants or, country boys to make like $17 an hour to do the same monotonous job over and over. Uh, but yeah, so if you want to do trades, that's fantastic. I'm not discouraging you. I'm just saying, don't have this romanticized view that it's so much better. It's going to be a job. There are some office jobs that are absolutely better than being in trades. There are some trade jobs that are going to be superior. Um, I do like doing stuff like if I was doing leather working or wood carving or basket making, which I've done all of those on a smaller level. If I could set up a workshop, I would do those, but it would be a hobby. I'm not going to do it to make a living because I've got no interest to be under that stress to do something well. That's where you really have to be artistic and just focus on it. I don't like the factory production mentality that goes into it. But even with the house I have now, I do a lot of maintenance myself. And yeah, I mean, it can be satisfying, but a lot of the times you have to learn because things are not working. So I was trying to reattach this piece of masonry, and everyone online saying, yeah, get this PL 500 landscape, it'll work great. Thing did not work at all. So, oh, now you have to go mix cements. Or last year, I think it was, I built a whole hydroponic system myself because I was like, I don't want to be a wuss and just buy it. I'll build it myself. So I get the paint, I get the plastics, I get the gasket, the electric pump, the growth pebbles, set this whole thing up. Took a while, plug it in, and they start growing. I'm like, this is fantastic. And then what happened is that the paint ran off into the water reservoir and it pumped paint water into the plants and killed them. And I was like, okay, I spent about $60 on materials for this stuff. So I could either try to do it again, probably spending a similar amount of money, or I can spend $100 on an aerial garden, which everything's prefabricated in a factory. You don't have to worry about those mishaps, and it works like a charm. And so sometimes sometimes being able to purchase something is better than actually making it yourself. I disagree when it comes to food. Like, making bread is much better than buying bread in most cases. But I'm just saying, it's what you make of it, all right? But just don't overly romanticize. A lot of guys, they were raised in these comfortable middle class environments, and they don't like society, so all of a sudden they want to like retreat to an opposite extreme. If I could just be a tradesman, or if I could just have a homestead. Realize that a lot of your mindset is being informed by the current political climate, by the people you're watching online. And maybe it'll lead to something you love, or maybe it'll lead you to a situation where you're actually miserable because you're just trying to do, like George Costanza, I will do the opposite. Maybe, just have self-awareness. A lot of people don't. They don't need to do any introspection. They just assume this must be right because everyone I agree with says it. All right. And it could just be that they're saying it.